The story of the Tower of Babel is much more than a mere legend. It's a narrative deeply rooted in humanity's attempt to understand the linguistic and cultural diversity that characterizes us. This story focuses not only on the construction of an imposing tower, but also seeks to explain why there are so many different languages in our world. The question of whether this tower was a real structure, and if so, who was the architect of such a project, continues to captivate human curiosity. Through this detailed analysis, we will explore the corners of this fascinating biblical narrative, unraveling its meanings and the lessons we can learn from it. Before delving into this story, we remind you to follow us and activate notifications so as not to miss any detail of our future explorations. After the Great Flood, humanity began to prosper again on Earth. The descendants of Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Japheth, and Ham, multiplied and spread across the world. Among the sons of Ham, Cush had a notable descendant, Nimrod, who is mentioned in Genesis 10:8 and following, as a powerful leader and formidable hunter. His kingdom extended from Babel, Erech, Akkad to Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Subsequently, Nimrod extended his domain to Assyria, founding cities like Nineveh and Calah. These biblical accounts suggest that Nimrod could have been the leader behind the initiative to build the Tower of Babel, as part of his effort to create a unified and dominant empire. Genesis chapter 11 reveals that at that time humanity spoke a single language. With the goal of preventing their dispersion and making a name for themselves, the inhabitants of Shinar decided to build a city and a tower with its top in the sky. However, this ambition did not go unnoticed by Jehovah, who, observing the unity and the single language of the people, intervened to confuse their languages and scatter them all over the world. Thus, the construction of the city was stopped, and the place was called Babel, where the languages of the world were confused. The location of the Tower of Babel, in the fertile region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, corresponds to ancient Mesopotamia, today part of Iraq. The association of Nimrod with this region and his role in founding significant cities strengthens the hypothesis that he was the one who drove the construction of the Tower of Babel. The idea of a single original language as described in the Bible raises intriguing questions about the linguistic origins of humanity. Although the specific language spoken at that time remains a mystery, the Bible offers a perspective on how the diversity of languages we know today may have originated from a common language. Researchers and linguists continue to explore the possibility of a single linguistic ancestor, attempting to connect the threads of modern languages to this supposed common origin. The Tower of Babel, therefore, not only symbolizes humanity's attempt to reach the sky, but also represents our intrinsic search for unity and mutual understanding. Through this story, we gain insight into how the ancients attempted to explain the rich diversity of cultures and languages that surround us. This story remains relevant today, as it reflects the ambitions, achievements, and sometimes the challenges we face as human beings in our constant effort to connect and understand the world in which we live. The narrative of the Tower of Babel, therefore, transcends its historical and religious context, offering us a window into the depths of our own history and culture, and continues to inspire us to reflect on our own identity and place in the world. Modern research on ancient languages has unveiled that current languages share a common linguistic ancestor. For example, contemporary languages like Spanish, English, Welsh, French, and Italian have their foundation in 3 ancient languages: Sanskrit from India, Latin, and Greek. Latin, now considered a dead language, is mainly used in specific contexts such as medicine, jurisprudence, and some liturgies of the Catholic Church. Additionally, there are notable similarities in the spelling of some ancient languages, indicating that these languages were the basis of other languages. For example, Phoenician, a Semitic language spoken in Lydia and Syria, shows in its writing system the roots of the Hebrew, Greek, Arabic, Latin, and Spanish alphabets. These linguistic studies reveal that all modern languages have a common ancient origin. However, tracing which was the first spoken language or the specific language of the times of Babel is a complex task. A distinctive feature of languages is their constant evolution in writing and pronunciation over time. Words and letters can fall into disuse, and languages can change significantly. A clear example of this is the Greek language, which has gone through various stages, including Ionic, Doric, Ialic, Classical, and Koine, the latter used in the writing of the New Testament, to what we know today as modern Greek. Returning to the biblical narrative, we find that after the flood, humanity settled in the plain of Shinar, located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in Mesopotamia, present-day Iraq. Nimrod, identified as the first ruler of these lands, built great cities and is believed to have been the promoter of the Tower of Babel. The Bible describes Nimrod as a powerful post-flood leader, whose name evokes concepts of rebellion, bravery, and power. His historical figure is enigmatic and has been associated with various names in different cultures, including King Ninus of Assyria, Sargon of Akkad, and Gilgamesh. According to the historian Flavius Josephus, Nimrod established a tyranny, wishing humanity to depend on his power rather than fear God. Josephus adds that Nimrod built the tower to avenge and subdue God for the destruction of his ancestors. This idea resonated among the men of the time, who united to carry out the construction. The biblical account continues describing how the men decided to make bricks and bake them with fire, using brick instead of stone and asphalt instead of mortar. The choice of materials for the Tower of Babel reflects the geographical conditions of Shinar, a land of mighty rivers where stone was scarce but clay was abundant. Traditionally, stone has been used in constructions that evoke eternity and are associated with the sacred, as symbolized by Christ as the rock. On the other hand, using bricks made of clay represented the human element, reminding that Adam was created from the clay of the earth. The use of asphalt to bind the bricks had a practical purpose, to waterproof and protect the tower from water. This technique allowed the ancients to build complex structures without relying exclusively on stone. Archaeology tells us that the first bricks were made from a mixture of clay, mud, and straw, formed in molds and dried in the sun or baked in fire, as mentioned in the biblical narrative. In the vast plains of Mesopotamia, the cradle of human civilization, great cities and architectural works were erected. Discoveries in present-day Iraq attest to the splendor of that era. Continuing with the biblical account, it narrates the construction of a city and a tower whose pinnacle aspired to touch the sky, a manifestation of human arrogance and rebellion against God. Nimrod, the central figure of this story, seems to have been the leader of this movement, driving the construction of both the city of Babel and the tower. His ambition seemed to focus on creating a global empire in opposition to God. To fulfill his dream, Nimrod needed two key elements: a unifying center that would serve as a capital and meeting point, hence he built the city, and a center with the power to convene, both geographically and psychologically, that would function as a reference and common motivation for the peoples. In this context, the Tower of Babel was erected with the purpose of being that type of center. The intentions to build a city and make a name for themselves reflect an attitude of defiance and rebellion against God, as well as excessive ambition. This project, eminently human, intended to aggrandize man to the point of becoming independent of the Creator. The biblical account indicates that although God had instructed humanity to spread and populate the earth, the men decided to build a fame that would allow them to remain united and not disperse. This union, marked by pride, led them to believe they were independent of God. In their attempt to build their destinies and prove that they could fend for themselves without needing God, these men of the plain of Shinar revealed their earthly aspirations for glory, fame, and power. The tower they began to build was a construction known today as a ziggurat, of Sumerian and Assyrian origin. Ziggurats were stepped pyramids made of brick, with ramps for ascent, and a temple at the top for the worship of celestial deities and the performance of sacrifices. Flavius Josephus' description suggests that the Tower of Babel could have been a ziggurat, given its width in relation to height. Biblical studies interpret the ziggurat as a representation of a sacred mountain, a link between heaven and earth, similar to the purpose of temples in general. In this attempt to build a tower that reached the sky, the human aspiration to connect with the divine is reflected. However, the true Mount of God, according to biblical teachings, is not found on earth. Although places like Mount Moriah in Jerusalem are significant, the true Mount Zion is in heaven. Antiquity, and even today, considers mountains and high places as sacred, and the worship of pagan deities often involves the construction of altars in these elevated sites, a recurring theme in various parts of the Bible. The Tower of Babel, according to some interpretations, could have served as an astronomical observatory, a place to study celestial bodies. This idea gains relevance when considering that in antiquity, disciplines such as astronomy, astrology, magic, and religion were intrinsically intertwined. Cultures like the Babylonian and Chaldean, renowned for their knowledge in these matters, integrated these practices into their daily life, and characters like Daniel were educated in these sciences. This reinforces the notion that Babylon was a point of convergence and origin of various religious practices. Regarding the size of the Tower of Babel, there is a notable lack of certainty. Sources other than the Bible, such as rabbinical texts, provide different descriptions of the tower, although some details, like a height of 70 miles, seem to be exaggerations. However, it is generally believed that the tower reached an impressive height, enough to require divine intervention. It is described that God, in his omniscience and omnipresence, descended to observe the work the humans were doing. The use of the term descended is an anthropomorphism that implies an action of God to understand human intention and effort. The ability of the men of that time to communicate without barriers, due to their common language, allowed them to collaborate and unite their resources effectively. However, this unity in communication also reflected a fallen and rebellious human nature, still fresh from the judgment of the flood. God, faced with this situation, decided to confuse their languages, preventing them from understanding each other and causing their dispersion. This divine act is interpreted as a deliberation within the Trinity, suggesting the participation of multiple aspects of divinity. The confusion of languages resulted in the impossibility of maintaining their unity and collaboration, leading men to separate and disperse. The dispersion and the cessation of the city's construction gave rise to the name Babel, which symbolizes the place where the languages were confused and men were scattered throughout the earth. This separation represented the end of their union and rebellion against God. The language barriers imposed became an effective means of separation, more powerful than any physical frontier. Despite theories suggesting a gradual development of languages, this event is presented as a sudden divine intervention, altering the ability to speak and understand different tongues. The construction of the Tower of Babel was abruptly interrupted, and its builders dispersed in all directions, marking a crucial point in the history of humanity's linguistic and cultural diversity. Reflecting on the confusion of languages at the Tower of Babel, the question arises, was this a blessing in disguise or a curse for humanity? From the perspective of divine purposes, it can be considered a blessing, as it prevented humanity from uniting in rebellion against God. However, from a human viewpoint, especially in the tendency to stray from God, it was clearly a judgment, a punishment. Over the centuries, this linguistic division has been a serious obstacle to communication and unity among human beings. Today, with the advancement of technology and communication media such as radio, television, satellite communications, and air travel, these language barriers are diminishing. In this context, it is interesting to compare this event with what happened on the day of Pentecost, narrated in the book of Acts. On that day, the gospel was preached in various languages, allowing the gathered peoples to understand the message in their own tongues. This event can be seen as the divine response to the Tower of Babel, where God offers a gospel and a message accessible in each person's language. Currently, the Bible has been translated into more languages and dialects than any other book, being distributed to a wide range of peoples and tribes around the world. The purpose of the miracle of Pentecost was to show that God had provided a solution to the problem of the Tower of Babel, offering redemption to humanity through the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. From a historical and archaeological perspective, some have identified the Tower of Babel with the ancient ziggurat of Edom and Enki in Iraq, which means, Temple of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth. However, any structure that could be related to the Tower of Babel has completely disappeared. Even Alexander the Great considered rebuilding this building, but the project was abandoned after his premature death. Subsequent civilizations that inhabited the region of Babylon have been associated with practices of idolatry, divination, enchantments, and abominations. The story of the Tower of Babel, its theological interpretation, and its impact on human history and religion, continue to be a topic of great interest and relevance today. The lessons learned from this biblical account continue to resonate and offer valuable perspectives for understanding our history and culture. Now I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments section, as they are of great value to this wonderful community. I hope this presentation has provided you with valuable and interesting information, and don't forget to give us a like and share this content with your loved ones, family and friends, so that they too can benefit from this incredible knowledge. Until next time, and may God bless you.